Hey everyone, I hope you're good and your walk is light. Today I want to talk about fear, one of my favorite things to talk about. There's plenty of real talks on this already, but I want to embrace how I've been dealing with fear lately and share it with you. And hopefully I can show you how there's two different modes and how you'll be able to overcome it. To me, fear is the greatest obstacle that we face, whether you're chasing enlightenment or not. A lot of people will say it's about this or it's about that, releasing our emotions, releasing our past, all that. This is all true, releasing guilt, shame, all that. But what they're not seeing is that all comes from fear. It all comes from the fear of what we don't know about ourselves. Fear is the opposite of love. Some people would tell me, no, the fear of love would be hate, or the opposite of love would be hate. But where do you think hatred comes from? It comes from fear of the unknown. Until you address the fear of the unknown, you will continue to hate, and you will continue to hate yourself. So let's talk about this a little bit. Because the thing is, there's two faces of fear. Take, for example, have you ever noticed how your body knows things before your mind even catches up? Like yesterday, I was standing in the driveway. I wiped some grease off my hands. I was staring at my van like it was a question I wasn't ready to answer. I just installed a new engine part, something I've never done before. I am not a mechanic, bro. But the engine, it turned over clean. She was purring. Everything seemed to be fine. I was actually a little bit excited. But when it came to actually test drive her, to take her out on the highway where real speed and real consequences live, but the only way that I would know if it worked, really, I froze. Not physically. I still had the keys. I could still move. But inside, there was a full committee meeting going on. Like, what if the part fails at 65 miles an hour? What if I didn't torque it right? What if I'm stranded in the breakdown lane with no plan? What if, blah, blah, blah. But then I remembered what I was shown during my awakening recently. That this was the fear program working its game on me because I wasn't hearing the one voice of fear. I was again hearing two voices of fear. And as usual, they weren't saying the same thing. Now listen, I'm a developer, so I look at it from this point of view. It might be different for you. But the original code of fear existed in our systems for a good reason. That version of fear that's been with us since before we had a language for it, it's the kind that tightens your grip on a ladder, makes you pack extra water for a long hike, tells you to double check the stove before you leave the house. I must do that 15 times a week. This fear is functional. It's survival architecture. It doesn't speculate. It just scans for gaps in their preparation, and it says, all right, we need to handle this. When I thought about driving the van, part of me said, check the bolts again, bring a flashlight, have a backup plan. All good advice. That's good fear. That's the system working the way it's supposed to. But there's another voice underneath of it, quieter, stickier. And this one doesn't want me to check the bolts. It wanted me to not drive the van at all. It's not ready. It'll break down. What if you lose control? What if the van blows up? All kinds of crazy batshit excuses that try to keep me from moving forward. That is the other fear. The one that doesn't protect your body. It protects your certainty, your ego, your story about who you are, your need to stay small enough to stay safe. And the thing is, it's not really malicious. It's not even wrong to exist. It's just confused. Because the glitch is in the system. See, somewhere in our evolutionary timeline, fear got an update that nobody even asked for. The original program was simple. Avoid the T-Rex, avoid the saber-toothed tiger. Don't eat poison, survive the winter. But then we developed imagination, abstraction, the ability to simulate futures that don't even exist yet. And fear, trying to keep up, started treating possible threats the same way it treated present ones. I mean, think about it for a sec. Almost all your fears are based on future events in which you have no certainty or control over as to what the outcome may be. And this secondary fear does its best to come up with as many scenarios to scare the shit out of you as possible. And so suddenly, the tiger in the bush becomes the email you haven't sent to your boss. The dark forest became anything unfamiliar in your future. This is the fear that shows up when you're about to publish something, say online, and it whispers, everyone will think you're stupid. This is the fear that keeps people in their jobs that they hate, relationships that drain them, cities that they've outgrown because the known suffering feels better than the unknown possibility. It's not that this fear wants to hurt you, it's that it never learned the difference between danger and discomfort, between death and change. It doesn't understand change. So when fear shows up, and it will, always, you have to figure out which version you're dealing with. And these are the two questions that I started asking myself. 1, is this good fear doing its job? Can I take an action right now that will satisfy it? If yes, if there's something I can check, tighten, prepare, or adjust, that's good fear doing its job. It's giving me real information. I listen, I act, and I thank it. Before I drove the van, good fear said, go back under the hood, double check the connections, bring a phone charger, map the nearest gas station. I did all that. And the fear, it softened. It didn't disappear, but it relaxed because it got what I needed, a competent response. But the second question is, am I just watching a movie in my head? If the fear has no actionable requests, if it's all just worst case simulations, shame spirals, or vague dread, that's the other fear, the confusion, the ghost in the shell. That's when I pause. I breathe 4 seconds in, hold for 4 seconds out. And I say, hey, thanks for trying to protect me, but I'm collecting real data in the now. Embrace it. Don't confront it. Find your answer and move forward. Those are the questions you ask. Figure out which fear you're dealing with. Embrace both of them. Sort them out and move forward. Here's what I finally learned when I drove the van. Nothing was wrong. It drove great. There was no breakdowns, no disasters, no humiliation. It was just a smooth ride. The part was functioning like it was supposed to. And there was this quiet realization that I had been arguing with what ifs that never even existed. Think about how often that happens. I mean, for example, recently a friend was telling me how for 6 months he wouldn't text his dad because he was convinced that any real conversation would turn into the same old argument about his life choices. Every message just sat there, half typed, then deleted. He imagined the disappointment, the lecture, the tension from his pops. When he finally called, his dad said, I'm just glad to hear your voice. I don't care about the rest. See what it does to you? And we all go through this. 6 months of phantom arguments this poor bastard was going through. 6 months of guilt, distance, rehearsed defenses, because bad fear wrote a script for a fight that never happened. I mean, consider a person who never starts a creative project because they're terrified it won't be good enough. I've been there. Like, they never write the book. They never launch the business. They never record that song because bad fear said, you'll fail. It will fail. You won't succeed in this. And they treated it like a fact instead of a hypothesis to be tested. I mean, just imagine for a second if Jimi Hendrix succumbed to his fears, or if Einstein was worried about releasing his papers. If we don't embrace and overcome this add-on fear, you have to think about the things you might be holding back from the rest of the game. You have to stay creative because in the grand scheme of things, that's what makes the game continue to move on, at least in my opinion. You see, good fear would say, learn the basics first, get the feedback, start small. Bad fear just says, don't do it. One is a teacher, the other is a prison guard. So, is there a way out? Well, here's what I think is happening on a deeper level. Fear, in its original form, was designed to keep us alive long enough to learn. It was never supposed to prevent learning. It was supposed to make learning safer. But the mutation, the program update, if you will, the second fear, started treating uncertainty itself as the threat. And once that happens, growth becomes identical to danger. So the way out isn't to eliminate fear, it's to reteach its original job, its original programming. Every time you notice the difference between the two voices, every time you ask those two questions and act accordingly, You're rewriting a little bit of your own code. You're saying to your nervous system, this isn't a saber-toothed tiger. This is new information, and we need to move toward it. You're training the second fear to step aside when it's not needed. Not by overpowering it, but by showing it that the thing it's afraid of isn't the thing that it thinks it is. And over time, it gets quieter. The good fear, it'll stay sharp. The bad fear learns to wait in the parking lot. My friends, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's knowing which version of fear you're talking to and choosing to move anyway. It's the ability to say, thank you for the warning, to the part that wants to keep you safe. And I've got this, to the part that wants to keep you small. Because the truth is, the creator, the system, the universe, whatever name feels right to you, didn't design fear to paralyze us. It designed fear to prepare us. And when you honor that, when you let good fear sharpen your awareness and bad fear fade into the background, that's when you stop sitting in the driveway and instead you start driving. I love you all. Walk in light.